Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Allbound Revolution, the show where we make marketing and sales speak the same language. Every episode, we're diving into the strategies that help businesses align their teams and actually drive revenue. I'm Tamara, your host and professional Let's Make This Make Sense enthusiast. Let's get into it. Today, we're joined by two strategic masterminds behind Allbound Plays at RP. Meet Maya, senior strategist with over 17 years of sales and marketing expertise. Hi, Maya.
Hi.
Renata, the queen of paid media with over 7 years of experience. And our RevOps guest, Rodrigo, sales wizard with over 9 years in sales and marketing.
Hey, guys.
Hello. I'm really excited because most of us here have experience both in sales and marketing, so we can kind of make the translation inside ourselves. So let's get right into it. I'm going to start asking questions and let's have a conversation. This episode is about vanity metrics, and I want to ask Maya, in your experience, what's the number one metric B2B marketers obsess over, and it doesn't really matter?
I think the number one metric that B2B has traditionally been focused on is MQLs, right? Those marketing qualified leads. And companies define that marketing to sales handoff a little bit differently. So even across B2B companies, while the term is the same, when you look at how people are defining it, it's not always the same company across company. And then it doesn't really look to impact, right? So the rub between marketing and sales is marketing hands off all these leads that are MQLs and sales gets them, and sales is like, none of these are qualified, right? Sales doesn't want to accept any of these leads. And so you really don't see what makes it down the funnel to really impact your bottom line. So MQLs, I really think, is just like a vanity metric. It's very top of the funnel, and it doesn't really capture marketing's impact to business.
Okay, that's new. I had never heard that. Like, MQL is a vanity metric. I don't know. I mean, I agree at certain point, but then how do you measure marketing's impact?
I think marketing attributed revenue is really the direction most organizations are going, and I think that's a lot more effective in really seeing what campaigns are contributing to the ROI. That is really where marketing is going to get its credit.
Okay. Rodrigo, Renata, what's your take on this?
It is a heavy question because my whole goal this quarter is MQL to SQL. So it's all vanity. No, it does make sense. When I think about it, there needs to be like this person that gates it. So to your point, always tied to revenue. That's the first thing. But the second thing is who's making sure that whenever somebody becomes an MQL, something happens, right? That I can tell you this is a bad fit because XYZ, and I can actually have some kind of result instead of just a number. So if we just look at a funnel and do nothing with it, looks cool, but it becomes kind of vanity if you don't have actionable insights that actually make you do something in your day-to-day. So yeah, I do agree with it. It depends on how you use it. And a lot of times it's just a number, but that number needs to become something else. And I'll pass it on to Renata. I want to hear your take as a paid media strategy.
I think that for paid media, it's pretty different. I get what you both said about MQLs being vanity metrics in the long term, and also like turning into this obsession that we need to get MQLs because that's how we increase the pipeline. And that's really good. But as Rodrigo said, if we don't have like actionables after having MQLs, that makes no sense. And we can get to revenue, which is our whole purpose, right? But then in terms of paid, there are a lot of upper funnel metrics that also turn into vanity all the time. So for us, MQL usually is like really down the funnel, because before that you have like different types of conversions, you have clicks, you have impressions, and sometimes we get using those as vanity metrics, and then getting into MQLs is like, okay, we are at least near sales or near the sales team. So it's pretty funny how you see that as a vanity metric, and for me, usually it's like an accomplishment to even talk about MQL. But I get what you say. I totally agree.
Yeah, and I think Rodrigo makes a great point. Like, the actionable insight is really what's important. I think a lot of times leadership comes to marketing and they're like, how many MQLs did we generate? And they only care if the number is like growing up. But it growing up isn't necessarily a indicator that marketing is having more success, because you could be bringing in a lot of leads that aren't, to Rodrigo's point, like aren't good fit. Like, what is the actionable step? What's the quality of these leads is really what matters. And to me, like, if they're quality, if they're turning into deals.
I have a really clear example of what we do in RP, and it's really clear. Usually people, the way they measure SQLs is by SQL is somebody that booked a meeting, for example, right? In our case, or in my case specifically, it's not somebody that booked a meeting, it's somebody that booked a meeting and goes to stage 1, which is somebody that's an actual fit. So that's a challenge. I need to make sure that if there's that MQL to SQL conversion, I'm taking care of the people that are on my team so I don't waste their time. So that's a whole different metric. That's not vanity. That's me making sure that I care about their time, but as well, those numbers are real. Like somebody stage 1, very different from just generating meetings.
What do you mean when you say take care about their time?
So if I can do discovery in a conversation, they don't have to do it in a call. So if I just want to book that call because that's my KPI, that's my vanity metric, I can say, hey, I booked 20 calls, but I knew that 12 of those were never going to convert. But I'm just chasing the number. So I'm reaching my goals, right? So I can say 100% quota attainment. Yeah, but if you look a little bit deeper, that call shouldn't have happened because you could have qualified during a conversation in LinkedIn, an email. So I make sure I do that. I wish it was just the calls sometimes because, it gets a little bit harder, but it's better.
And also the thing is that when you have like this huge number of MQLs, but then the sales team ends up meeting with those MQLs, which marketing is like, hey, we're having a bunch of success here because we have a lot of leads and MQLs, and they meet with them and they're not qualified like at all because we haven't done a discovery before. That's where we start having silos, right? This interference between both teams. And that's what we don't want to accomplish, never.
It's really interesting because last call we met up with Kendra, Rashida, and Melissa, and we were talking about teams having this, the horses that have blinders so they don't get like nervous or distracted. So it's kind of the same thing with sales or marketing teams who are just chasing a number. So I think that a lot of these numbers we start chasing and become vanity metrics have their origin in reporting. So I'd like to ask Rodrigo, what are some common reporting mistakes that lead teams to chase the wrong goal?
So if we follow the conversation with the MQL one, I think it's a good one. So by the way, like MQL, if I say marketing qualified lead and I ask 5 different companies, completely different answers. So whenever I say MQL, take it with a grain of salt. What I mean is somebody that marketing says that it's ready for sales. So it's kind of the baton. A lot of times those reports make no sense. So when you look at it, it should be amazing pipeline generation and everyone's managing correctly, and then becomes an opportunity and it's close loss, but there's a huge gap sometimes. So those are the reports I commonly see that people are not ready to ask the tough questions. To your point, like they're chasing a number, they're showing up in a report, but if you really dig deep, you'll get to tough answers. So that's what Brian does here for us. So we get those answers pretty straightforward and it's amazing. But you also get like, okay, if that's happening, these are the next steps. So the reports become a source of truth for you to do your day-to-day tasks, what should be done in a week, what should be done in a month, so that the quarter is effective. So that's kind of the way I see it.
Okay. Yeah, love it.
I see that too in some of the partners I've had and just past experience, like the reporting, the lack of clarity in reporting makes it really tricky. Handoffs between leaders where we've redefined what is the requirement for MQL makes comparison over time really rough. So that like lack of clarity and even like disparate systems, right? Like they have all these like partially integrated tools. I don't know if you've run into that, Rod, in your experience, but it's like, okay, we get some data from this and some data from this. Maybe some of the paid data comes in, but like it's not the full funnel reporting. A lot of sometimes is missing, and that makes it really difficult from a marketing perspective to say like here's a total like source of truth, and that's really needed.
Yes. Renata, from the paid perspective, what would be some of those reporting mistakes that lead you in the wrong direction?
I think there could be mistakes, but sometimes we are like misinforming or confused because of our daily job as a marketer or as a paid media specialist in my specific case. So as I said before, we're so into the pay media KPIs and metrics that sometimes we forget that that's not the goal. The goal are MQLs, SQLs, deals, and revenue. Of course, revenue and deals are more important than MQLs and SQLs, but we cannot get those without the first, as we said before. So what happens usually is that we have our own reporting for optimizations, and then we have reporting for the marketing team, like our partners marketing team, for which we work really hard. So we need to represent what we are doing and how we are improving this pipeline, and then how we are collaborating with the whole marketing strategy. And then we have the really important reporting, the one we present to the C-level, the one we want them to present to their whole company. And those are more about revenue and cost and how much we're investing, how that's performing into the different segments and pipelines of our partner, than about clicks or conversions or campaign performance. I'm not going to talk about campaign performance if I'm going to report to a C-level, because they don't know what campaigns we're running. They just know that we're using marketing efforts and that some of those efforts are paid media. But if I'm talking to a marketing lead, they want to know what we're doing for the marketing strategy. So I think it's about being focused to who you're talking about and how do you want to communicate what you're doing or what we're doing as a whole, and try to represent that information that you see like in your daily job into really important data.
I love the way you put it, because I think when it comes to paid media, leadership gets nervous because sometimes we're talking about thousands or more of dollars invested, and it's super important to tailor the results and the reporting results to each group. So I think sometimes we forget about that. Like if we start getting everyone nervous, there's going to be a turmoil and everybody's going to start jumping, and then we cannot actually do the work, right? So I guess.
Yeah. And also, it usually has a lot of pressure because we're investing money on it. Like we're always investing money if we have a team working as an external team working, all right. But over that, we're investing actual money in clicks. So we want that to count. And usually we use paid media as a resource because it has a better impact, I would say, on the marketing strategy as a whole. And this is a good moment to say that without a whole marketing strategy working all right and having like a focus and a goal, it makes no sense to have a paid media strategy because it's always like going to power up your whole marketing strategy.
Okay, definitely. It's not all about paid or all about organic. We need to be brothers and sisters.
Yeah, and I'm actually curious, Rod, did you have any experience with paid media reports in the past or just marketing?
No, yeah, paid media for sure. And it's where they get the most nervous because they can see a number attached to the result. So most C-suite level individuals, when they see that is, wait, how much is the lead? Like, are you telling me that this is how much it is? And you go like, yes, but you're not selling peanuts, right? Like you're actually selling houses. So the lead should be expensive. Those conversations need to happen. And what's funny, it's not really funny, it's alarming, is that when you see those numbers, they focus on the paid media side of things, but it's kind of like you need to look at the whole marketing service that you're paying or whatever you're doing. Like, for example, RevOps service, it kind of doesn't have a specific number attached to the value, but paid media is so specific that you can see a number attached to it and you react the most to it. So yeah, so to answer the question real fast is it kind of focuses the whole meeting in that. Like paid media used to be the one that, hold on, let's focus on this, and then the meeting's over. But we need to make sure that that doesn't happen because Yeah, it does.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I absolutely relate to that.
We have been to that kind of meetings that it gets sidetracked into the rabbit hole.
Then it's hard to get people back out of that. But exactly to Renata's point, like it doesn't make sense to have a paid media strategy as a standalone. It needs to be part of your entire marketing effort. And like, yes, that is a thing that has a clear dollar value associated, but there's so many ways to use paid media to power up and help you reach your marketing goals faster. That it's really important to have, I think, kind of like a team structure like ours, where we're working together to make sure that like this makes sense and we're running the right plays that make sense, and how can we augment what we're doing, and even having someone like Rod to be able to help pull all of the data from all the different places together, so that we can make the like, most informed decisions for the partners that we're working with.
Definitely.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Ooh, okay. So here's a question that I need to understand. What's the difference between leads generated and pipeline created, and why should we focus on the second one? And I'd like to ask Maya.
Well, I think this kind of goes to what started my hot take about like MQLs doesn't necessarily matter. Leads generated is really, it's that number top of funnel, right? It's how many conversions did we get from our paid media ads or this piece of gated content we have. And some of those are going to be good fits, some of those are going to be bad fit. Pipeline created is how many potential deals do we have from the, a lot of times pipeline created, I don't know, maybe Rod, you can answer, but I've seen it measured in like dollars, right? So like the pipeline creative reports can be generated in dollars, and it's like, here's the total of opportunities we have from these efforts and the dollar amount associated with them, right? And you're not going to close every deal, right? Like there's a lot of factors in play, but it's like how much of this actually turned into a possible sale.
Ooh, okay. So it's
Yeah.
kind of like you're speaking this, like we're investing this amount on marketing and sales, and we're generating this amount of opportunities.
If I could put it in an easy way, I don't think you guys tell me if I did that, right? It's about either increasing force or reducing friction, right? And in regards to marketing, it's how do you increase that force so that the pipeline generated? So generate pipeline, that is kind of like the North Star for anyone in marketing, because that's what you eventually want to do. And reducing friction has to do with the RevOps side, which is, okay, how are you passing the baton from marketing to sales and then to customer success? So it's either increasing that force and demand generation or reducing the friction so that when you actually have the force and you have the leads, they move smoothly all the way to close one. There's a lot that goes into that. Like it's not, for example, stage zero, Maya asked, how do you guys forecast that? We do it in stage one. Stage zero, we still haven't had a discovery call, so we cannot attach a number to it. Once you have a discovery call, you can actually attach a number to it because you know what type of solution you're going to offer, or if you're a product, what type of product you're going to offer to that individual. But if you don't have that discovery call, you're basically having numbers thrown around. So we don't do that unless we are actually sure that that's what the prospect needs. And we kind of have that North Star as well.
Absolutely. And to add to everything you just said, I think it's also related to how we are reporting and what we are talking about. So if we are reporting quarterly, for example, or monthly, we will talk about where all our marketing efforts, for example, led us. So we will talk about pipeline, opportunities generated. And then if we're just talking about short-term results, we may be talking not about pipeline because pipeline takes time. Usually in B2B, I don't know if you agree, guys, but we are talking about partners with 90 days conversion window. So from lead generated to the pipeline, we need to wait 2 or 3 months. That's a lot. Actually, 3 or 4 months. So that's like the whole difference about when we're going to talk about this term or this other KPI. They are absolutely related, and we can talk about only leads generated, but to get a pipeline, we need time. And usually they are not representative of the effort that we're doing right now, like short term, but long term.
It's a great point. Usually it goes to the question of what's the average deal size and the amount of time it takes you to close that deal. A lot of times what happens is during discovery, they say, okay, it takes me 90 days, like you mentioned. But what happens is that they want results before 90 days. And you just go like, that that really doesn't make sense, right? Like if 90 days is the amount of time you're going to close that first deal, at least give it 6 months. So let's see this, if the strategy is working. The average deal size communicates how many deals they have. So if it's a lot of deals, it's way different than if it's huge tickets for each deal. So it all depends. You have to ask those questions and then follow through with that.
Yeah, that's a really great point. I have one partner that has like their average deal time is like 9 months. So it's like, okay, well, we really have to invest a year before we really are going to know, is this strategy working, which is not something everyone wants to hear. But when
Nobody
it comes
wants to hear
to, yeah, right.
that.
Nobody wants to hear that. But when it comes to really being able to say, like, is this effective? I mean, that's really going to be the true indicator. And yeah, we can, identify some like leading indicators of success, some of those, higher up the funnel type of things. But having that conversation based on the particular business is extremely important to both points being made.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I think we're getting to the end of this episode,
So sad.
but I'd like to ask a final question so we have our audience take away something to their teams, to their company, to their notebooks. So I'd like to discuss how can we make sure both marketing and sales teams are looking at the same success metrics. Anyone wants to take a go?
I think it's impossible, but that's the thing. Like you can have 95%, but that 5% to reach the 100% is going to be that never-ending question. But don't close those conversations. Like those conversations are healthy. Like we always need to have new dashboards based on whatever new thing we're trying, but then make decisions with whatever new thing we're trying that we're all in agreement. So that's where the silo conversation happens. To be honest, I only use silos whenever I explain RevOps. Like I've never used it on my day-to-day, right? Like what is that? But let's call it islands. So everyone is in their island. The ways that you communicate with all the people in the islands is different languages. So you need to have one place in which we're all speaking the same language. And those need to happen in the QBR. Like every example QBR, like it depends on where you do it. But if you have a quarterly...
What's a QBR, Rod, for those who don't know?
It's a quarterly business review. So it's where everyone meets and we're seeing in a very easy way to digest what's happening with the efforts from demand generation all the way to customer success. So from the left side of the bow tie model all the way to the right, if we're talking about winning by design. If you guys are not familiar with it, I invite you to take a look. So that's what we do here in RP. But the QBR should inform how are we moving forward and also create those conversations. If you see something that's not happening, don't be afraid of reaching out. Like I reached out to you guys, for example, and asked things to marketing. That's healthy. That needs to happen. So 95%, always reaching to 100%, but that 5% is where it's at.
And I think that the reason why we can talk about like the same to follow with Rodrigo's analogy, which I loved. The reason why we can talk about or talk the same language is because we don't have the same goals. Like marketing is going to have different goals from the ones that sales are going to have. And that's right. The problem is the problem appears when we don't have something in the middle that communicates in a healthy way and work together to both goals because the higher goal, like our long-term goal, is the same one, to get deals, to get revenue, as we said at the beginning. And it's all like super related and communicated if you take a look at the bigger picture. But on your daily jobs, like when you're just trying to get to your quarter goals, you can't report on the same KPIs or metrics. You just will need to have different ones because marketing works towards sales goal, but sales can work towards marketing goal. Does it make sense?
I think the visibility that Allbound gives with these tools, like you can actually know the people who visited your website, reach out and have that reporting be so much more specific. I think that's a great way to align both teams.
Yeah, that's where I was gonna go. I think a lot of it is making sure that conversation is open and still happening to their point. Because ultimately as a marketing leader, you need those campaign level metrics. As a sales leader, you're looking at your conversion rates and who in your team is closing deals faster and like what the points of friction are. But to have somewhere where the fact that in a lot of organizations, marketing and sales have now come together under a RevOps person, I think has really helped bring sales and marketing closer together. And I see in organizations where they meet together with a RevOps leader who's like everything sales and marketing fall into one realm. Obviously, they are going to have those silos a little bit. I feel like those organizations work better and they have those conversations more often than where like there's a marketing leader who's over here and there's a sales leader and there really is like a hard line and they report to different people. So I think some of this is just like having organizational structure that facilitates those conversations becomes important. And thinking of it as like we are all a team, right? Like we are all responsible for deals and growth. So how can, each organization do what they need to do, but also how are we working together and where can we work together better? Sales enablement has become more important, right? And marketing a lot of times helps with that. So there's so many opportunities to be having those conversations, bringing those teams together. And that ultimately just impacts the organization's effectiveness to actually win and close deals, which is the goal.
Thank you everyone for your time. I hope to see you on the next episodes. This conversation was pretty rich for us and I hope for the audience too. And see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.